Hello, I'm Ashy. I'm joined today by Daz.
Hello, hello, it's me again.
In a previous video, we covered a little bit of theory behind classes, and today I want to do a quick, brief overview of the core classes. We'll start from the top of the list and go down in alphabetical order. The Barbarian is your quintessential frontliner. It has full BAB and a d12 hit die, which means it hits often and can take punishment. Its rage feature adds to that, allowing it to take more punishment and deal more damage while reducing its AC, making it a little bit easier to hit. The Barbarian does get mitigation tools as it advances in levels to help it survive the punishment that it receives.
Barbarians are typically the angry frontline fighter guys. So you got examples like Conan the Barbarian, or Guts from Berserk, or even Drax the Destroyer from Marvel. Mind you, I would say more the comic book version and less the slightly goofy movie version. But even Thor can be depicted as a raging, tanky berserker in a lot of media.
I like Goofy Drax. He's funny.
He he is funny.
But yeah, some decent examples. So, the
Yep.
Bard, out of the gate, is a support class. It has a D8 hit die and a medium BAB, so it is not the best at fighting on its own merits. It is a half caster getting up to 6 level spells, but has a fairly support heavy list. In a party, it is an excellent force multiplier, making everyone better at almost anything they could be doing, whether on or off the battlefield. Not to mention it is a solid skill monkey by its own merits as well.
Um, Bards can fall into a lot of different spots, but they don't necessarily need to be horny. My first thought is actually Dr. Facilier, the voodoo guy from The Princess and the Frog. He's got great charisma, a killer singing voice, and magic. His friends on the other side. Zelda from The Legend of Zelda could also absolutely be a bard too. Again, charisma, magic, musical talents. So you can get out there and woo the princess. Or don't, because horny isn't the only way.
Oh man, Dr. Facilier. What
Yeah,
an interesting pick. And I see you
you
really
know,
hate that horny bard.
I do.
The cleric is usually the servant of a deity, relying on it for its power. Cleric is usually pigeonholed into the healer role. It has access to powerful spells up to 9th level. Its medium BAB and D8 hit die don't keep it from walking up to the front line either, if the spells from its fairly diverse spell list it prepared allows it to do so.
Uh, Cleric examples can basically be seen everywhere. They're the priest archetype, the white mage of the party, the pious one that brings healing light and the wrath of their gods into the fronts of combat. Nearly every fantasy anime has a priest or healer of some type, and the first one that came to my mind was Hyder from Frieren Beyond Journey's End. He was pretty funny, but very devout, and had those healing powers. Yeah, I'm a weeb.
It might be worth mentioning that if you're playing an evil cleric, you are most certainly probably not a healer. Probably more of a walking fireball at that point.
That is true. Yes, evil clerics are a thing.
So, let's talk about the druid. The druid is a caster tuned to nature. You may recall we had a lot to say about it previously. They are a great healer tank DPS. They often have an animal companion that can be a force to be reckoned with in itself. The class has a D8 hit die and a medium BAB like the cleric and the bard, but once it gets access to the wild shape feature, it very well might be relying on that buff to thrive in melee. You know, if it wants to. With spells up to 9th level, it could also thrive at a distance, throwing all manner of buffs, debuffs, and battlefield control spells. Druid is lighter on damage spells, but that doesn't mean they don't get some really good options as they progress.
Oh boy, I'm gonna get a lot of hatred on this one. A druid is a nice nature-loving caster who brings the anger of nature to bear at the enemy. Good spells that connect to nature. Great for summoning animals. And yet, despite all of this, I personally cannot think of druids who completely fit the Pathfinder version of them in popular fiction. I'm sorry, I just don't know druids well enough.
Yeah, it can be hard sometimes. I'm sure there are plenty
It
of good
is.
options, but it escapes my mind as well, to be frank.
Yeah.
The fighter is your quintessential fighting man. They have full BAB and a D10 hit die, which allows them to comfortably stand on the front line, though they are much more reliant on high AC for mitigation than the barbarian is. Despite their descriptions as masters of all armor and arms, their feats tend to lead them to choosing a single weapon to be the master of, gaining a respectable amount of bonus to hit and damage as they progress. Speaking on feats, the sheer number they receive is one of the big draws to the fighter class, getting them at first level and every even level that follows.
Yeah, fighters are the skilled fighting guy. This is where you go if you just want to be an expert on weapons in general or a specialist in one weapon. They are the typical fighting man, but they can fit so many fantasy ideas. Disney's Aladdin, Hercules, Troy, pretty much anyone that fights can be comfortably considered a fighter.
Absolutely. The fighting man. The fighter.
Yep.
Yeah, just about everybody. So, the monk is a class that I'd have to call a skirmisher. It is a D8 hit die and a medium BAB class. And being baseline designed to enter melee combat, it feels its BAB and hit die a little more than Cleric or Druid would. Though its flurry of blows helps to offset its medium BAB by allowing it to pretend to have full BAB and 2-up fighting when taking a full attack action. As a class, though, I can't help but imagine it would prefer another frontline threat to take some heat off of it.
Well, everybody was kung fu fighting. The monk is a quiet, meditative kung fu master, sure, but don't let that stop you from playing a brash loudmouth. Jet Li or Jackie Chan in almost any movie they've been in would both count as different types of monks. And in reality, the idea of being primarily reliant on your mental and physical endurance over weapons and armor, kind of pretty awesome.
It kind of is. There is something to be said about that, like, just self sufficiency, the wholeness of mind and body.
I mean, what is it that they said? How scary is it when the dude who has no armor or weapons just starts sprinting at you at 60 miles an hour?
You know, I don't think I'd be running the other way. I think I would probably be too shocked about the fact that somebody's running that fast at me.
Yeah,
And I'd
that's the
probably be
monk.
promptly deceased. Yeah. So the Paladin. The Paladin is a holy warrior, usually devoted to a god like a cleric, but not always. They are a full BAB and D10 hit die class like Fighter. And like Fighter, they are relying on AC for most of their mitigation. They likely will spend just as much time on the front line, if not more time. Though, while fighters enjoy a plethora of feats, paladins have to make do with their odd level feats, but do get a nice selection of class features that grant them convenient immunities and resistances and allow them to pass on some of those resistances to those in close proximity. Their hallmark ability is their Smite Evil, which is an ability that helps them punish evildoers by granting them more to hit and damage and AC against a specific target chosen when the ability is used. They're also partial casters that get up to 4th level spells.
Ah, yes, the champion of good. Don't let people tell you you have to worship a god, though, because many do, but being a general knight in shining armor often works too. Often the knights of the round are depicted as paladins, and characters actually like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Captain America could easily be seen as paladins because of their virtuous ways, and in Obi-Wan's case, being part of a big holy order.
You know, I never would have thought of Captain America as a paladin, but I could see it. He does kind of fit into that lawful goodness.
Oh yeah, like I would have also dropped Superman in here at being a paladin, but I don't want people to think that they have to be a goody two shoes, and you start adding like too many of the good people, and yeah,
I mean, being restricted to lawful good does kind of push towards that, but lawful good doesn't mean lawful nice.
yeah.
Oh, and it is possible for your paladin to be your healer, but that's an awkward situation to be in.
Oh man, yes.
So now, the ranger.
Oh
The
boy.
ranger tends to be the butt of everyone's jokes. They are a D10 hit dice class, with a full BAB, but they don't enjoy heavy armor like fighters and paladins before them do. This doesn't stop them from being able to be on the front line, but they are more reliant on dexterity to make up for this loss of AC between medium and heavy. Though, none of this is the reason that they are looked down upon. Their bread and butter abilities, favored enemy and favored terrain, they require that you pick a specific creature type to hose, and a specific terrain to get bonuses in, which makes them less flexible than other classes in their bracket. That said, their Ranger Styles ability is absolutely amazing by allowing you to bypass feat requirements for your selected style when you invest in a feat at the appropriate levels. They're also partial casters that get up to 4th level spells, and they have the ability to gain an animal companion from a specific list.
Yes, the humble ranger, whether they're an archer, a tracker, or a swordsman. Rangers are a bit all over in media. A good example actually would be Robin Hood and the Merry Men, as a ranger's bond does not necessarily need to be an animal companion, but can actually just be their compatriots. And an odd choice would also be Geralt of Rivia. He could be classed as a ranger because of his focus on preparation and knowing a lot about his particular quarry. And his animal companion would be his friendly horse Roach. Friendly.
Droll is absolutely a ranger. Absolutely.
Yup,
He absolutely has favorite enemy, all of those things.
basically.
The Roach is an animal companion. I don't know if Roach ever fights, though he is trusty and comes when called, which is probably more than you can expect from your average horse.
Yeah,
At least when you're fighting giant monsters.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. The
I
Rogue.
don't know how many horse. Oh,
The Rogue is the quintessential skirmisher. It is encouraged to make use of stealth, sneak attacks, and flanking. Its D8 hit die does mean it will be a bit on the squishy side, but its medium BAB is usually offset somewhat by always trying to find that optimal position to ensure it can get its extra sneak attack damage. It's also a skill monkey that brings a lot of utility to the party with its skill ranks.
rogues. Jesus, these fuckers are everywhere. Thieves, scouts, guides, scammers, treasure hunters. They fit into a lot of places. Indiana Jones, Aladdin, Jack Sparrow, they're all types of rogues. But also a character like Han Solo or Ezio Auditore, when they fit the bill too. And even John Constantine could be a rogue if you picked a particular archetype to get access to certain skills. They
I
really
agree.
are everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, rogue is a fairly common concept. Like, a lot of people do, like, gravitate towards that sort of, like, edgy, broody boyo. Myself included.
Yeah. Yeah, rogues do tend to get the bad rap of being the edgy boys.
Brood harder in that corner, my dear boys. Alright. The sorcerer is a caster with up to 9th level spells that has a magical origin rooted in its ancestry. It has a d6 hit die and a slow BAB, which means that it is both exceptionally squishy and also exceptionally bad at fighting in the same way that a rogue or a fighter would fight. Fortunately, it's diverse and fairly aggressive spell list gives it the freedom to not do that. Unlike Cleric and Druid, its spell list is very light on any form of healing. It also has slightly slower spell progression than either Cleric or Druid, which share progression with Wizard.
Sorcerers get their powers from their blood, and while a popular trope in general, the sorcerer takes it and turns it into magical power, which kind of makes it a little more limited with looking for examples in media. Anyone who gets their power from their bloodline and not needing to study could be classed as a sorcerer. So, someone like Storm from the X-Men or Scarlet Witch. But a pretty wild example could also be the Avatar from Avatar The Last Airbender. Since they have the knowledge in them to begin with, thanks to their ancestry, they just need the practice to bring it out.
Nice. And, speaking of the idea of wizards, since I mentioned them a moment ago, wizard's also a d6 hit die, and it also has slow BAB. It shares the sorcerer's spell list. It differs in that it can have a much larger slew of spells at its disposal. Though being prepared caster versus sorcerer spontaneous, it has to be choosy about what spell slots it wants to prepare with what spells.
You're a wizard, Harry. Yeah, wizard is probably the easiest to fill out with examples because they are basically everywhere. Fantasy has just wizards coming out the wazoo.
True.
I mean,
Those
every character from Harry Potter, pretty much
Merlin,
every yep,
Gandalf, they're usually seen as
Merlin,
wizards.
Gandalf. To go into anime, Frieren, the titular character from Beyond Journey's End, is a wizard, constantly looking for spell books.
So is Fern.
Like, so is Fern. Yes, yeah.
So many wizards.
Wizard is probably the easiest to find examples out there. If you don't know what a wizard is, you might need more help than learning Pathfinder.
I do think Merlin, at the very least, would probably be closer to being described as a sorcerer than a wizard, considering his magic and lore comes from the fact that he's half incubus. So, pretty close to literally being an infernal or abyssal sorcerer, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So, you have any final thoughts to share?
Yes. Rogues don't need to be edgy, and bards don't need to be thirsty.
Yes. Breaking stereotypes.
Fighters are not boring. Fighters are not boring.
Whoa there, that one might be controversial. As the fighter
I'll
lover,
go there.
I'm very offended. Anyways. Yeah. I can't wait to actually cover these classes in more detail later on. And then maybe we can break out some archetypes that'll break them out of the mold that they're currently set in. You know, like non-supportive bards or non-basic ass fighters.
That'll be fun because
I think
we've got some.
There's at least one non-angry barbarian. That's weird. I look so forward to sharing all these with you all, though. But, yeah, that probably wraps things up. If you like this video or like what you do, consider liking, and if you want more, consider subscribing. Goodbye.
Thank you. It was fun.